Well, welcome, folks, to the 700 Club. Massive and mysterious explosions have blasted Iran's nuclear and missile facilities in the last few days. So who's behind the blast? Is it Israel using cyber warfare to attack Iran's nuclear program? Well, Chris Mischer is going to tell us more about it from Jerusalem.
The biggest explosion took place Thursday, July 2nd at Natanz, one of Iran's main nuclear centers. It damaged a new centrifuge assembly center designed to enrich uranium. An Iranian official explained Iran's version of what happened.
Today, at around 2 a.m., there was an incident as a result of which there were physical damages. Thank God we haven't had fatalities.
The New York Times reported that a Middle East intelligence official said Israel was responsible, and also cited a member of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps who said an explosive was used. This satellite image at Natanz showed extensive damage, but the Natanz explosion wasn't the only recent incident. An explosion hit Iran's strategic missile complex at Kojir on June 25th, and another blast at a medical center in Tehran last Tuesday killed at least 19. With so many explosions in the space of just several days, many in the region are asking who's behind these blasts. A Kuwaiti newspaper, Al Jazeera, claimed Israel used F-35s to attack Iran's missile production complex. Then a group calling themselves the Cheaters of the Homeland claimed responsibility for the explosion at Natanz. Some security experts also believe an Israeli cyber attack led to the Kojir blast. Here in Israel, when asked about the explosions, Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi said, "Our actions in Iran are better left unsaid." While alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz said, "Not every event in Iran is necessarily related to us." How Iran responds to these incidents remains to be seen. Regardless of whether or not Israel is behind these incidents, Middle East expert Seth Frantzman says Israel's goal is clear.
Obviously, Israel does not want there to be any conditions under Iran would acquire a nuclear device or a system to deliver it, because if you build the nuclear bomb, you also need a rocket to deliver it somewhere. So both of those would be, I assume, technology that Iran must not possess. And Israel and the United States, I think, have been very clear on not having that happen.
On Monday, Israel launched a new spy satellite, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu extended the term of Israel's spy chief until next year. Analysts see both as signs of the ongoing simmering war between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Jewish state of Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, it's clear the Iranians have made absolutely certain over the years their desire is to eliminate, destroy, eradicate, whatever term you want to use, the state of Israel. No question about it. So Israel has an absolute right to defend itself, but they do so in such a fashion that there's no fingerprints, nobody can say, well, they did it, and that they are starting a war. But it must be very frustrating to the Iranians to think that these Israelis can manipulate their nuclear defenses. But if they have a nuclear bomb, they clearly will use it against Israel. Well, here at home, President Trump blasted the so-called cancel culture this weekend, calling it far-left fascism. John Jessup has that story.
That's right, Pat. The president took a controversially strong position against what many conservatives believe is a revolution against America's history, its values, and a threat to the country's freedoms. Dale Hurd has that story.
In speeches over the weekend, President Trump attacked the so-called cancel culture, which seeks to erase part of American history. He denounced it as a left-wing cultural revolution and said we only kneel to God. After weeks of rioting, burning cities, and toppled monuments, President Trump made clear he opposes those trying to rewrite and eradicate American history and values.
We will never allow an angry mob to tear down our statues, erase our history, indoctrinate our children, or trample on our freedoms.
Speaking at Mount Rushmore, which some on the left see as a symbol of white supremacy and would like to destroy, President Trump declared that the monument will never be desecrated and America's heroes never forgotten.
Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution.
The president warned that the left-wing movement is attacking America's basic freedoms.
In our schools, our newsrooms, even our corporate boardrooms, there is a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. If you do not speak its language, perform its rituals, recite its mantras, and follow its commandments, then you will be censored, banished, blacklisted, persecuted, and punished.
Attacks from the Democrats and the media were fast and furious. Even before the Mount Rushmore speech, in a tweet that was later deleted, the official Democratic Twitter account accused Trump of glorifying white supremacy. The New York Times accused Trump of using the Mount Rushmore speech to deliver a divisive culture war message. A CNN reporter called Mount Rushmore a monument of two slave owners and a land wrestled away from Native Americans. But CNN had no problem when Bernie Sanders gushed at a visit to Mount Rushmore in 2016 that it represented America at its very best. Meanwhile, more statues are coming down. Christopher Columbus was thrown into Baltimore Harbor over the weekend. And in Rochester, New York, the statue of black abolitionist Frederick Douglass was vandalized. The controversy is not likely to stop, as left-wing protesters are likely to target more statues across the country. And this is shaping up to possibly be a major issue in this year's election. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Pat, back to you.
Thanks, Dale. Over the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend in Chicago, 77 people were shot by some kind of gunfire. 77 in Chicago. Of them, I think 14 people actually died. And we have stories of a poor little black girl on the way to whatever they were going to, getting shot in the car. I mean, the violence is terrible. And then you have the Minneapolis City Council defunding the entire police department. You have de Blasio saying, I'm going to take $1 billion out of the police budget. You go through the list and you say, what is wrong with our nation? And we say we're not going to allow this to happen, but they want to destroy, and it's indiscriminate now. They're taking down statues of people who, for example, were generals in the Union Army against the Confederacy. They take down that statue. When you violate the statute of Douglass, who was a great civil rights leader in the early days of the black emancipation, of his statue being defamed, it means these people are just going crazy. John?
Well, as Pat just mentioned earlier, young children were among the victims in a wave of deadly shootings in major cities over the holiday weekend. At least 77 people were shot in Chicago. 15 of them died, including a 7-year-old girl. Chicago police said she was shot in the forehead on a sidewalk near two suspects running away from a vehicle. Police says she was visiting her grandmother at the time.
It was a family gathering, so there were many kids. There were kids riding by on bicycles, as we said, enjoying a 4th of July, as they should have been. And now this child is gone.
Stop blaming the police department and the detectives and do what we got to do, because somebody on the streets, I say somebody on the streets, know who the shooters were. Somebody on the streets know who took the child's life.
And in Atlanta, 23 people were shot, including an 8-year-old girl who was riding in a car with her mother and a family friend. And an 11-year-old boy in southeast Washington, D.C. was shot and killed as well.
Going to do a community cookout for the community, and he was with his mom.
Other cities also reported shootings, including New York, Baltimore, Cleveland, Memphis, Greenville, South Carolina, and Pat, St. Louis, and more.
When you open Pandora's box, terrible things happen. When we take away the rule of law, there's chaos. I want to show you a very prophetic word that came out of the book of Isaiah. I was just looking at it, and it's in the Living Translation, which we have, our thing is the book. But here's what Isaiah said. The Lord will destroy all the nation's leaders, the heroes, soldiers, judges, prophets, elders, honorable citizens. Then he will appoint children to rule over them, and anarchy will prevail. People will take advantage of each other, man against man, neighbor fighting neighbor. And then he says, children oppress my people and women rule over them. Oh, my people, can't you see what fools your rulers are? They are leading you down a pretty garden path to destruction. You couldn't have said it more eloquently than the prophet Isaiah said it in those scriptures.
Wow.
Right on the money, and that's what's happening. Children don't have any knowledge of history. They don't have any knowledge of the origin of our country. We have the greatest country on the face of the earth. Sure, some of the leaders may have been a bit flawed in their lives. Yes, so have other leaders been flawed in their lives. But we have, without question, the greatest country that has ever been put together by human beings. They are not gods, but they are put together brilliantly. And we have more freedom, more liberty, more opportunity than any other nation on the face of the earth. And because some of their characters may have been slightly flawed, they may have been caught up in the spirit of the culture they lived in, we cannot strip our nation of its heritage. But this is the playbook of the Communist Party. First, you take away the heroes. You take away the reason why a people should fight and be strong. You take away the memory of the heroes. Once you've taken away the memory, then what do they live for? Well, they don't have any memory. They don't have any consciousness. We must hold on to the principles. When you think of those men who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which you just, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When you realize that they also said, we pledge our lives and our fortune and our sacred honor. And they were willing to go to die so that you and I can enjoy the wonderful freedom we have in America. This, for like it or not, is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. There's never been anything like it because it was set up by godly men and women who believed the Bible, believed in the truth and the dignity of human beings. Yes, there may have been some flaws in relation to slavery. There's no question about it. But nevertheless, to destroy all that memory is tragic. And to take away our leaders will set us up for chaos. And we just can't have it. John.
Pat, in other news, the Supreme Court is set to release some major decisions this week. Beginning today, the court will rule on cases involving whether employers and universities can claim religious or moral exceptions to the birth control mandate in Obamacare if members of the Electoral College vote for a candidate who didn't win the popular vote in their state, and whether the president should be forced to release his taxes. Well, he is the quietest justice on the Supreme Court during oral arguments, but he's also one of the most influential. Paul Strand brings us this look at the important career of Clarence Thomas.
For years after his confirmation hearing, Clarence Thomas carried scars from Anita Hill's accusations of sexual harassment. He fought back with history-making fury.
As a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks.
Some assume the experience left him a bitter, unhappy, uninfluential justice. Eric Jaffe clerked for him.
You see these photos of him scowling and looking down, and oh my God, it's this evil person from the right who's going to take away your life.
But those who meet this 72-year-old man of faith, featured in the recent documentary Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words, find this out.
How happy and gregarious and caring a person he is.
When Carrie Severino clerked for him, she saw just how caring.
He would walk around the court knowing everyone's name, from the elevator operators to the marshals to the other justices' clerks to the janitor.
He knew every policeman in the building. He knew the folks who delivered the mail.
His detractors originally considered Thomas just a shadow of conservative giant Antonin Scalia.
The not very smart portion of this duo.
But he's become famous for rulings based on the original meaning of the Constitution.
Scalia characterized him as a bloodthirsty originalist.
Authoring a book on Thomas, Ralph Rosem saw this fierce dedication to figure out the founders' original intent.
What were the ends that they were attempting to achieve? What were the evils they were attempting to avert?
Thomas has faced so much bad press from the liberal media, he no longer lets them influence him.
They're going to hate you because they've already said they're going to hate you. So you don't have to, you're not writing for them anymore.
And his strong stand is making him ever more influential.
The Hill magazine had an article entitled, "Is it now Clarence Thomas's court?"
One writer labeled Thomas the most important legal thinker in America.
He was acknowledging basically that Justice Thomas is the intellectual heavyweight on that side of the courts.
His former clerks see not just his love of the Constitution, but his warmth and wisdom when dealing with everyone around him, like looking past Jaffe's outer hippie appearance to his inner mind.
I had hair down past my shoulders. He cared about the intellectual part, not about the window dressing.
Severino came to interview for her clerkship with Thomas when she was pregnant and worried that would anger him. Then he said,
"We're here to help interpret the Constitution, and that's here so that you can live a life with your family in peace and in safety. And I don't want to do anything that would undermine that."
And he's funny, like at lunch after Scalia, back at the court, blasted him in a dissent.
Calling Thomas's opinion a liberty-destroying cocktail of arguments. Scalia was looking at the menu and thinking, what drink should I have? And Thomas suggested, how about a liberty-destroying cocktail?
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Paul. Pat, no doubt Justice Thomas's originalist profile has skyrocketed in recent years.
Well, you know, he came to Regent University, spent a good deal of time with us. I had a chance to speak at length with him, and we were talking about the First Amendment. And I said, you know, Mr. Justice, there's no question the First Amendment says Congress shall pass no law respecting an establishment or religion. He said, that's right. It's Congress shall pass no law. It has nothing to do with the states. And the fact that they have taken the Bill of Rights and extended it to the states was a mistake. He recognizes the mistakes the court has made, and he's a fabulous guy, but he's such a wonderful, warm human being. And I was so delighted to see him. They came. We've had a number of Supreme Court justices come to Regent Law School, and he was one that Scalia spent a good deal of time with us, and so did Thomas. But they're nice people.
Yeah. Well, he certainly has paid the price for the position that he's well earned. But goodness.
Well, that Anita Hill was a total put-up. Yeah, that's what they do. Because here's a conservative going to the Supreme Court, and the left would just go after him, and it just made him sound like he was some kind of a sex fiend. It was unbelievable. And you realize that Joe Biden at the time, I believe, was chairing the Senate Judiciary Committee that had, in charge of those hearings. So that'll come back to grab him. But I'm telling you, Thomas is a tremendous man. I hope he stays on longer. They're talking about his retirement. I hope that doesn't happen. And the question mark is John Roberts. Has he been the stalwart conservative that we had hoped? And his decisions, people are just, they're scratching their head like whatever happened to our friend John Roberts, who we thought, Jay Sekulow said, look, we've been together on cases, and he's our good friend, and we're so glad he's on the court. Well, maybe we're not so glad together.